Welcome everybody to Learn to Sew a Star Ornament with Rebecca George. I am Dana, I'm the editor of Fave Crafts, and I will be emceeing today's class. We encourage you guys to ask us questions throughout the class, and Rebecca will address them. It's a live class today. You can use the chat feature or the Q&A feature, either one. Q&A is a little easier, but whichever way you want to do it, we'll do our best to address all questions throughout the course of today's class. We are also recording today's class, and you will get that recording in your email in about 24 hours. It'll be available on YouTube and on our website, favecrafts.com. So stay tuned for the recording and ask questions as we go. I also want to thank today's sponsor, which is We Like Sewing magazine. We Like Sewing is a completely digital magazine. It's fairly new. We launched last year, and it publishes 6 times a year. So when you sign up, you get 6 issues. You get access to all of the previously published patterns as well. So that's an advantage of a completely digital magazine. You get access to the upcoming issues, but also the back issues. As a thank you for joining us for today's Studio Live class, we always like to offer an introductory offer for $5 to sign up for the magazine. So if you're a new subscriber, if you're interested in advancing your sewing skills, the magazine is ads free and all of the patterns are tech edited, so you know you're getting a high quality product. You can sign up at welikesewing.com/sew22. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. Rebecca George is a handmade blogger and the owner of the Chicago-based fashion line Purple and Lime. She studied fashion design in London, and several pieces from her graduating collection were featured in the fashion magazine ID. She had the honor to work on belt pouches for the movie Elizabeth the Golden Age, which won an Oscar for Best Costume. Rebecca participated in the first ever Cincinnati Fashion Week. And since 2011, she's taught fellow crafters in Chicago about handmade marketing and selling in group classes and private lessons. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, wonderful. So we are going to be making these beautiful ornaments here today. I want to say thank you so much to Fave Crafts for having me, and to our sponsor, We Like Sewing. Please check out both for the best craft and sewing tutorials, tips, and everything else you'll ever need, available online.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah. Today we are going to make these star-shaped ornaments. So as you could see when you registered, they are a sequin star, and there are 2 different sizes. There's a larger one that is about 4 inches, and then there's a smaller one that is about 3 inches. So you have both templates there. I'm going to show you the 3-inch one, but the 4-inch one, I'll tell you how to do that one. It's very similar. Okay, great. So the ornament can be placed on your Christmas tree. It can be on a doorknob or anywhere else that you want to adorn for the holiday season. And this pattern is really good shape too, because you can use it for like the 4th of July and make red, white, and blue stars, that kind of thing. So you could use it for other times of year. Okay, so before I go over all the steps to sew the ornament, I am going to review the materials that you'll need to make it. So we are going to start with sheets of recycled bottle felt like this, and it comes in, oh, sorry, Dana asked me a question. There we go. Okay, cool. So recycled bottle felt comes in sheets that are generally about the size of like notebook paper, regular 8.5 by 11. We are going to use the templates that we talked about, the star templates that you printed out and cut out on paper. We are going to use paper scissors to cut those out, or fabric scissors in a pinch. We are going to use fabric scissors to cut our material and threads. We are going to use 2 different kinds of needles, a regular all-purpose small hand sewing needle, and then a larger embroidery needle. As you can see, the embroidery needle has a bigger eye and is generally thicker. So we're going to use the smaller needle for our regular all-purpose sewing thread, like we have here. and that's to sew on the sequins. And then we are going to use a thicker embroidery floss thread to finish the ornament and to close it up. And then, of course, the main attraction, we have sequins in green and gold, and I used coordinating colors to match that, but you can choose to match it or it can contrast. I have here a thimble in case you need it when you're sewing, string, which will form the loop at the top of our ornament. And then for stuffing, fiberfill stuffing. If you don't have that available, you can also use quilt batting and just pull it apart. Okay, great. And then also, last but not least, a few pins if you need them to hold your pieces together when you're sewing. All right. So I recommend you make sure everything is within reach before you start sewing, because it'll make everything much, much easier. So before we do any of the sewing, we are going to cut out the star template from the paper. So if you printed out the template, there are two sizes. You have the 4-inch and then you have the 3-inch one. So the 4-inch one is going to have 5 sequins radiating on each side, and this smaller one will have 4. So I'm going to show you how to do this, but they are very similar. So once you cut these out with your paper scissors or your fabric scissors, cut these out. They don't have to be perfect. The star shape itself is not totally symmetrical, as you can see here. It's a little unique. I do like that because it helps me match it up a little better later. So once you have all those cut out, we can then move on to cutting out the fabric. And it doesn't matter which side you want to use for the top, as long as it just looks right to you. You kind of can play around with which direction you want it. Okay, great. So then you are going to use the paper template to cut out the felt fabric. So you can either pin it on or do the quick way like I do, which is just hold it against there and cut it out. I like to do one at a time because the felt can be a little hard to cut in 2 layers, but it's totally up to you. So you are going to literally cut around the felt all the way around until you have stars cut out. This is a different green, but it's the same shape until you have stars cut out. And you want to do one for the front and one for the back. And the back is just going to be plain unless you want to do the sequins on both sides. Okay, great. So for step 3, we are going to attach the sequins onto the front piece of the star. So I did this like a step-by-step for you. Okay. And I'm going to show you the sequin design before we actually sew them on, because it'll make it much easier to understand. Okay, so the pattern is as follows for the sequins. So for the 3-inch star, you want to do one in the middle that is green. I'm doing green in that case. You can either do different colors or you can do them all the same color, like all gold, all green. It's totally up to you, or you can do random colors. So for this design, I did one in the center that is one color, and then I did a different color radiating 4 out from there. For the 4-inch star, I did 5 because it's a little larger. As you can see here, it's the same design. It just has 5 coming out instead of 4. And after I did the 4 sequins in the contrasting color coming out along each part of the star, I then did another contrasting one in here. So there's 5 around and then 1 in the center. So it's 6. And then you have 4 on each part of the star. Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so before we start, you want to lay out your sequins. You can I keep it in a little bowl because otherwise it gets everywhere. You want to kind of lay them out. And sometimes sequins can get stuck together. So you want to make sure that you separate them. Like when they're made, they can actually get stuck together. So to start, you want to make sure you thread a regular sewing needle with regular all-purpose thread. I'm just using polyester all-purpose thread. You want to start from the bottom, go all the way through, pull your thread through so it's tight, and then whichever color you want to be in the center, start with that one, load it onto your needle, and be careful not to let your thread get tangled. And this thread is doubled up, as you could see here, it's double thickness. You want to place it right in the center here. You want to go up through one side, it doesn't matter which side you pick. Oh, and don't be like me and mess it up on your first go. Apologies. Oh, and somebody in the comments asked where you get the star pattern cut out. Dana has that in the comments, and it will be provided also after the class. So, apologies, I went through the wrong side. So, for your center star sequin, let's try that again. All right.
Rebecca, your hands are just a little off the camera.
Oh, apologies.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so thank you for letting me know. All right. So you want to hold that one sequin down in the middle. And you want to also be careful that you don't get tangles like that. In the middle. And then you want to go through it another time. So it'll be tacked down 2 times. So each time you go through twice for each sequin, okay? And this one, tie off in the back, okay? Because you're going to be moving on to another color. So we're going to stop using that color thread. Okay, so for the next step, you are going to start putting the radiating outward sequins. So start with 1 here, go up through the middle and then back through, and then do 4. So I'm going to show you on here. So I already did 1 line of them, and take your time with this because the longer you take, the better it'll be. As you could see when you rush like me, it doesn't wind up as good. So you want to always start from the bottom, go up, place the sequin on, and you start from the bottom part of the sequin. Place it so it's flat. And then you want to go through twice again, just like the center one we did. So you have 1 go. And then another go. And ideally, you don't want any snags or pulls on the back. So continue this until you have 4 in a line, starting from the bottom, placing a sequin. So this is for the smaller star. You want to do 4 in a line. The larger one we would do 5. And so the line doesn't have to be perfect. Yes.
I was just going to ask about the direction the thread is. You're kind of having it in a line. The thread is in a line as well, it looks like.
That's a really good point. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like here, this one's going this way, but once we radiate this way, the threads won't match up. For me, it's just easier to go in a line because it's the same motion. So I would go up through the center and then go through one side and then the other. But honestly, it sparkles, so you won't be able to tell perfectly. But as you could see here, this one is a little off, but it's okay. The most important thing is that they are securely attached, because when we start to hand stuff it, you don't want the sequins to be coming off. Okay, great question, Dana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So if you continue on, eventually you will have 5 of these. So it almost looks like a starfish. So once you have the 5 pointed rows and then the center, knot your thread again, and then I am going to go in with the green contrasting sequin to add a little more sparkle. If you wanted to, you can even move them a little further out. I just liked the tighter design in there, but it's totally up to you. You can add sequins randomly, however you want. Okay, so going back in with my all-purpose thread, I'm going to just do 1 on each corner in between the sequins here, okay? So I like to go up through the center of where the hole is going to be. It kind of gives you a visual of where you want it. I'm going to, again, go through the bottom of the sequin. And sometimes sequins can be a little fiddly, or they don't come out right from the processing. So if you have one that's causing you problems, just set it aside and use a different one, because ideally you should have a lot to work with. Okay, so I went up through the center. You don't have to make it exactly here. You can really just tack it down twice, but I like to make the 2 lines where I tack it down a little further apart from each other. Okay, so as you can see here, sewed on the first one. And then you can, if you want to double check to make sure it's smooth and you want to reinforce it, you can go through it once here in the back, make a little knot. And then here you can just move right on to your next one. I went a little further out, so I'll use that as the outer edge. So you want to put another sequin on until you have all of them around. So there'll be 6 total, 1 in the center, and then 5 around here. Obviously, this is the stitching we'll do later, but go ahead and do the rest of the sequins in these little corners here. Did we have a question?
We have a tip here from Elizabeth. She said it's easy to use chalk to draw the lines and follow that way.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yes, or even like a removable fabric marker, that kind of thing. Yes.
Yeah, and then somebody whose initials are SV is asking, what is the name of this type of embroidery?
I don't know of a name. Do you mean the style of attaching the sequins?
Maybe.
Or the embroidery floss? This is just regular embroidery floss that you can get at like craft stores, even, you know, regular grocery stores sometimes have it. And then this is just tacking down sequins. So I don't have a particular name for it, but I'll have to come up with one.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Sure. Okay, so you would continue on till you have all the sequins that you want on the front of your ornament. Okay, because once it's stuffed, it'll be much harder to put the actual sequins on. So ignore the stitching around here. You would then have a flat piece with all the sequins on it. And you would have a second piece, which you know is your back piece, and you are going to put them together. I'm going to show you how to do the blanket stitch on a blank one. It's easier to see, but this will be the front of your decorated ornament, and then this will be the back. It's just plain. Now, sometimes when you are sewing, hand sewing and adding hand elements, it can make the fabric you're working with shrink a little bit. So when you actually put the 2 pieces together, again, the front and the back, if it's shrunk or if it's changed shape at all, just use your fabric scissors and, you know, smooth it out and trim it. As you could see here, you could use a little touch up here, okay? And this is a good time to refine your shape before we wind up closing it up and finishing the ornament.
Rebecca, Lois is asking, is there a particular place where you purchase the sequins or where one should purchase sequins, I suppose?
Um, Honestly, sequins you can buy at any kind of craft store, sewing store. Sometimes you get it in packaging and can reuse it. Honestly, it's kind of wherever you find it, but big sewing stores and supply stores will always have a big selection of it. I got a variety pack and it has like a bunch of different kinds of colors, a lot of them in the green family, but then I thought it'd be nice to have some metallic gold to go in there.
Thank you.
Sure. And double check though when you're buying sequins, if it's online, that you're checking the size because there's a lot of different sizes. And this is just like a standard small sequins, but there's also larger ones. They're called pilettes sometimes. And those can be much larger. And you could also do the same project with like a flat seed bead. Anything that really adds a little sparkle will look really pretty on your Christmas tree. Okay, so before we move on to closing up the ornament, I want to show you how to do the blanket stitch, which is this chunky stitch we are going to do with the embroidery floss. And if anybody attended the Learn to Hand Sew class, I showed you how to do the blanket stitch, and I am going to do a refresher right now. So you want to use your embroidery floss and embroidery needle. It doesn't have to be like specifically an embroidery needle, but it has to be able to get the floss through the eye. As you can see here, it's a thicker eye and a thicker needle. So you want to thread that, and I did a single thickness. Unlike when I was sewing on the sequins, this is just one thickness instead of doubled. And I knotted it at the end. So to start a blanket stitch on this ornament, we are going to go inside the two pieces, and ignore this. This is just so I can show you, but we are going to start from inside and go down through the back, and you want to go as far down as you want to see the stitch. So this is a beautiful stitch because it's literally visible. So you get like a couple millimeters here, you can see it, and it has a really nice rustic look. So as long as you go, as far as you go down, that's how long your stitch will be visible. So starting again on the inside, to do the blanket stitch, you want to go through the back. And make sure you have a good secure knot because you want to do a little bit of tugging and pulling in here. So you want to make sure that it's not going to come through, and trim it so it doesn't show. Okay. So you're starting from the inside with the knot. You want to hold the knot down to hide it. You're going to go around and then again down as far as you want it to be visible on your ornament. Through. And then here is what creates that beautiful border edge on the blanket stitch. You want to go down through the loop before you close it, and then very gently pull it. And then forms a little loop, and it might look a little funny at first, but once you do a couple of them, you'll see it'll look really beautiful. So you want to somewhat evenly space it around the ornament. As you see here, I tried my best to leave the same amount around it the whole time. So again, you're going to go up through the bottom, down through your loop, and be careful not to get it tangled. And this is a nice stitch because if you do make a mistake, it's fairly easy to take out and you can start it again. And then you want to leave the edge along here, and it might look a little puffy until you do a few, and then you can kind of space them out and tighten them. Okay, so going for the next one, go up through the back, through both pieces, and then through. So up and then pick it up again. And I'm going to show you the corner because obviously it's a star, so it has points. This is a more rounded star design. So you want to just kind of use your hands to manipulate it and make the stitch go around. And it's not going to be totally perfect, but you want to try to make sure it's visible all the way around. And I'm using this white so it'll contrast and you can see it, but you can use all green if you wanted your ornament to blend in a little more. Down. And so then we've turned that corner there. So you want to do the blanket stitch around all the edges of your ornament until you get about 3/4 of an inch around. So I just left the top point open on the ornament, and then we are going to stuff it. But do not cut off your string, your embroidery floss string thread, because we are going to need it to close the ornament. Do we want to take our break now, Dana? And then we can stuff and finish the ornament when we come back?
You know, I have a few questions first,
Okay.
and then we could take the
Great.
break. That would be great. Yeah. So
Perfect.
Anne is asking, is this the same as cross stitch thread?
Yes, you can use, yes, embroidery floss is often used in cross stitch. But they do, I haven't done counted cross stitch or anything like that in a really long time, but I remembered that I think there's about 5 actual threads in here that come apart. I remember in counted cross stitch and things like that, you take apart the fibers. So you just have 1 or 2 strands, depending on how thick you want the line. I'm doing it with the whole thickness of the thread, but yes, it is the same kind of material.
Okay, great. Let's see. And then Christine was asking, do you use all the strands of the embroidery thread for this blanket stitch going around?
Do I use the entire length of it or
all the strands that it came with?
Yes. Sorry, apologies. Yes. Yes, I kept it in the same thickness. I think it's 5 or 6. I haven't done it in a long time where I've taken them apart, but yeah, you could see here that there's several. So yeah, like when you're doing cross stitch or that kind of needle point type craft, you would take some of these apart so it's thinner. So yes, I am using the full thickness of the embroidery floss.
Great. Okay, I've got 2 more questions and then we can move to our break. SB has 2 questions. One is, what needle size did you use for this stitch?
Let me check during the break and I'll try to find the package of the embroidery needles and then I will get back to you about the exact size.
Okay, great. And then they're also asking, you know, any tips what else you can decorate sequins with, like scrunchies, for example.
Oh, yes. Scrunchies, basically anything that you want to sparkle and that isn't gonna be worn like maybe for athletic wear, that kind of thing. Anything that you can take good care of and not just for clothing, for home decor. You can make a Christmas stocking with sequins. That'd be really beautiful. You could make a Christmas tree skirt with sequins. That might take a while, but would also be really beautiful.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm going to go ahead and move into our intermission now. So let me pull up my slideshow. All right. So if folks want to take a short break, if you want to, you know, get up and stretch, grab a drink of water, whatever you would like. I'm going to talk about our upcoming classes and I'm going to talk about, well, I'll thank our sponsor again. I'll talk more about our sponsor. So we've got 2 classes coming up in January. Rebecca mentioned her Learn to Sew class and we are rebroadcasting that class in January. So if you missed it in October when it was live, we are showing it again in January. So you can, that's on Tuesday, January 17th. So save the date if you would like to check out basic hand sewing tutorials. And then on January 24th, we have a new live class, which is Cricut for Beginners. If you guys are interested in learning about the Cricut machine and the different, it's a die cutting machine, and there's all sorts of different uses and crafts you can make with it. It'll cut, vinyl, it'll cut paper. This is going to be a card making class using your Cricut machine, and it'll introduce the machine and how it works. And you can learn more about it that's with Angie Holden. She blogs at thecountrylchicCottage.net, and that's a brand new class. That one will be live on Tuesday, January 24th. Save the dates. Unfortunately, the classes are not available yet to sign up. I'm hoping to get that done by the end of the week as I get final materials for them. But bookmark favecrafts.eventbrite.com, and you should get a notification when we've published or when we've made those sign up pages live. We'll have more classes coming up in the new year, February, March, etc. But we know for sure those two are happening in January. And then thank you again so much to We Like Sewing for sponsoring today's class. This digital magazine publishes 6 times a year. It's entirely online. When you sign up, you get access to all of the previously published patterns. The patterns are all tech edited, and the magazine is ads free. So it's a great experience reading the magazine, and you're going to get high quality patterns when you sign up. New members can get the magazine for a $5 introductory offer, and that's welikesewing.com/sew22. All right, I am going to turn it back over to Rebecca now.
Hello again. Okay, so I checked on the needle sizes, and for the regular all-purpose needle, I don't know the exact size. I did use just a general assorted needle, and it's one of the smaller ones from a regular pack, just for regular all-purpose thread sewing. And for the embroidery needles, actually, I have yarn darners needles and I have embroidery needles. And I actually wound up using the yarn darners needle. So it's not technically an embroidery needle, but very similar. And you could see here the sizes are 14 to 18. So I think I wound up using both of those successfully. And for the embroidery needles, they are, as you can see on here. Okay, so any kind of larger needle that's good for hand sewing that has a larger eye will work for you. Okay.
Rebecca, I have one more question before you dive back in. Anne is asking, do you ever glue sequins with fabric glue, or will they fall off over time?
I have, and yes, they will. But I mean, if you're doing it like for a temporary situation, like a Halloween costume, that kind of thing, it can be fine. It's just if it's for, a garment or something you're going to have for many years or be wearing a lot, I would say sewing is a better option. Although there are some really amazing, kinds of glues and stuff on the market now. So
thank you.
Yes. All right. So the last step on this ornament, now that we've done the sequins and we've done the blanket stitch almost all around, you want to leave some open here so we can stuff it. Now is time to stuff the ornament and add the string and then finish it. So I don't know if anybody here has ever stuffed anything with fiberfill stuffing. It's just a really soft polyester stuffing. You can use other things, but this is what I would recommend. It'll last the best and hold its shape the best. So I start with just, a little, like a half a handful, and then push it down into the open part of your star. And this is why it's important for the sequins to be very securely attached. So in this instance, I wouldn't recommend gluing it, but I guess theoretically you could make it and then glue them on after if you didn't have time to sew all the sequins on. So the most important part here is to get the stuffing down into each of the little points of the star. If you need to, you can use a pencil or another little poker device to get in there, but take your time. Can take a few minutes, and you have to keep adding a little bit as you go and kind of push it into those little corners. You don't want it to be like hard. You want it to be soft, but still retain its shape. So you can see here, use a little bit more down in here. And just add a little bit more at a time as you go. Okay, and I'm going to put a tiny bit more, and then we're going to put the string in, and then I'm going to show you how to close up and finish this ornament. And this same technique you can use not just for the shape, you can use the same blanket stitch stuffing technique for a lot of different kinds of crafts. Okay, so I have it pretty full. You can see here, it's almost all filled except for the top point. And you can use a ribbon, a string. I used a coordinating gold string here to trim it down a tiny bit. So it's not as long, but you want to make sure that your string is a little longer than your ornament because you're going to stuff it down inside. It's better to have a little extra than not enough. So you want to form a loop. You can literally tie it, or you can just hold them together. You want to place it down in here in the ornament and add a tiny bit more stuffing back. And then you really want to double check that you like the direction and the angle the string is at. Here, and you want to make sure it's not coming out at all. And you want to add a tiny bit more stuffing. And if you need to put a pin across it, you can, because sometimes, you know, it can be fiddly and it can be coming out. So add a little bit more stuffing, and then make sure you rearrange here. And I am going to add a pin because it keeps popping open. You want to make sure no stuffing is sticking out here. So you want to leave the same amount of room as you did everywhere else. So I'm going to put a pin here, and just be really careful because you're hand sewing not to catch yourself on that pin. So you have the string in, your ornament is stuffed. If it starts to come out, adjust it as you go along. Just be careful not to get yourself with the pin. And then you want to hold it together. Since your embroidery floss is still connected on here with your large needle, you want to just continue along the ornament with that same blanket stitch. Okay. And you see here I have a tiny piece of felt. Okay. So you want to continue all along that edge. And make sure you keep the even spacing as much as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is a handmade ornament, but I want it to look nice. And here I have the pin, so I am going to go behind the pin here and just kind of pretend it's not there, but you will be taking it out, obviously. Down through the loop again. Okay. And it can get a tiny bit tricky when you get to the top. Remove this pin here. Can be a little tricky, but you just want to, you know, be flexible here. I'm going to always still go through the back part here. And then through here. Okay, so you want to just do it the same as the other corners you did. So go, oops, back through and make sure that your ornament string is still really securely in there. You can see here I'm holding onto it very tightly. You want to go through the back and then through the top again. So you have that finished edge there. And we're almost done. So now that you're done with the part with the string, that's the scary part. Once you're done with that, it's just a matter of continuing the blanket stitch.
Rebecca, CC says, how gorgeous, would look magnificent on a package, a pretty gift on the box.
Oh, thank you. That is really, really flattering. Thank you. I would love to get it, as long as I don't have to make it for myself. So, there's only one more stitch left to do here. And you could even make these as like a gift tag and put someone's initial out in the sequins, or use embroidery floss. You can make someone's initial on the back and attach it to the package. That would be really beautiful. So go through the last part here. Okay, and you still want to connect these two pieces here. So you kind of improvise and you want to go through. So as long as it shows at the top edge here. Okay. And then you can go back down through the back. And I like to go through one more time discreetly. You don't want to be able to see it, although no one's really looking at the back of it that much. And then you want to tie it off and trim your embroidery floss. And there you go. You have your sequin star ornament. And you might want to move the filling around a little bit so it's a little more even. But other than that, it's finished. So it's fun to make the two different sizes and kind of mix them up. And you could do a few of these and put them like on a garland. If you wanted to connect them all on one string, that would be really fun too. Yeah, so the red, thank you. I'm glad you like the red. I did the red with the matching embroidery floss edge, but like the other ones, you can do a contrasting color or you can make it blend in. Any other questions or parts that you want me to go over again? Yes.
I was going to say, so far, so good.
I know that. I guess that's good. Yeah. So this same design you can use to make a lot of different kinds of shapes, but it's a really nice way to finish something, and it's all hand sewn. You don't need a sewing machine. It's a really good activity to do when you're sitting around during the holidays.
Sweet. Karen is asking, what material is that string that you used for the hanger?
Oh, it is, I don't know exactly what it's made from, but it's a Simplicity twisted cord. It's a synthetic material. I buy it every year to use for ornaments because it's perfect thickness, and it comes in silver, gold, and red. So it's Simplicity twisted cord, it's called.
And then a couple of folks are asking about sewing down that string, but you didn't sew it down. It's kind of just tucked in there, right?
At the end, yeah. Yes, at the end, I just kind of tuck it in and do an extra little knot. So you could see here, like on this one, it's a doubled up. It's doubled up here a little bit. And then you could just kind of pull the blanket stitch so it's showing in the front.
Dorothy's asking specifically about the cord that's sewing. You don't sew down the cord to hang the ornament, right?
Apologies. You can, if you wanted to, you can actually use a stitch and sew it in. I more so just kind of pushed it down in there and held it in and put stuffing on top of it. But if you have a problem, which I have encountered with some, certain kinds of cording materials where it frays or it's slippery and it keeps coming out, then you can sew it down if you need to. You can even like put a larger piece that goes across on the inside and push it down in there so it kind of tacks it down.
Okay. Great. Yeah, folks are saying these are adorable, so pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think if that's all the questions, I'm going to go ahead and, oh, wait, we've got, let's see. Oh, Laura's asking, how did you adhere the sequin? Laura, we're going to be sending the recording to the class out tomorrow, so you can get the recap that way. I mean, we do have time. It's only 11:45. If Rebecca, if you wanted to show just sewing down.
I can show you. So we sewed on sequins. So sequins are just the little metallic sparkly pieces. And we did start with a contrasting color in the center. So I did green in the center, and then I did 4 gold coming out from on each side of the star. So continuing on here, the gold wants to sew on a sequin. You can do it whatever way works for you, but ideally come up with a pattern. I like to do 1 through the center, what will be the center hole. Start from underneath, put your sequin on your hand sewing needle. You want to hold it in place where you want it to be. And then I went through them. Oops, a little bit of stuffing in here. I went through them each twice. So 1 time one way, and then 1 time the opposite way. And then I just continued on in the line. So most sequins, like a standard sequins, is going to be round with a hole in the middle, but they do come in all different shapes and sizes. So the exact way you sew it on might vary a little bit depending on the exact sequin you're using, but this is the way to sew on a standard one if you want it on sewn on totally flat. You can also sew them on upside down if you want. It's really up to you.
Wonderful. Laura says, thank you. I'm making some tonight.
Love to hear that.
Yay.
Yeah, so like I said, this is a fun craft. You can make them for the 4th of July. You can cut out a heart, use the same kind of design and make a heart one for Valentine's Day. It's a really adaptable design.
Sweet. All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you.
I am going to go ahead. I'll share our screen one last time, and we'll close out the class here momentarily. So if you guys loved learning from Rebecca today, definitely check out her January class. Also check out all of her social media and her website. So she's at purpleandlime.com, and she has an Etsy shop, Purple and Lime, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So go ahead and visit her on social media, follow her on her different social media, check out her Etsy store. And thank you again so much to We Like Sewing for being our sponsor today. You can subscribe to the magazine at welikesewing.com/sew22. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed today's class. Thank you again so much, Rebecca.
Thank you. And everybody have a beautiful holiday season.
Yes. Wonderful. All right. Thank you again.